I didn't grow up thinking I was disabled. I'm just Judy. My hands and legs are different. I walk slower, but my parents never treated me like I couldn't do things for myself. I learned to care for my own needs, learned how to cook, and even had my share of chores to do, and go to school like everyone else. And if I couldn't do something one way or another, I'd figure it out. That mindset stuck with me. I'm Judy, 64 this year. I work at the Muscular Dystrophy Association. MDAS provides care and support for people with muscular dystrophy and their families. And I also run my own consultancy, Level Field Consultants, where we work with agencies, architects and developers to create accessible built environment and spaces. The journey to where we are today is nothing short of amazing. We never thought accessibility and seamless connectivity would happen in our lifetime, but it has, and it's so wonderful to see everyone being able to move around freely and independently. To be able to see persons with disabilities able to step out their own homes, be able to be part of community, being able to do whatever they set their minds out to do, and having no fear that they are unable to succeed just because they have a disability is what I really love to see. Where boundaries and limitations are not set just because you have a disability, but the sky's the limit. At MDS, we have a power chair football team where even people with severe disabilities can kick a ball, dribble, score goals, not just watching from the sidelines. If you can imagine what Singapore was like in the 1980s, one could barely move around, much less if you had a wheelchair. You can't get into buildings, and even if you could, you become like a delivery truck where you come in through the back doors or through the unloading bays and stuff like that. Since then, right, we've made a lot of changes, significant changes to improve accessibility in the built environment. We can just go where we want to, when we want, and no one bats an eye. Is that freedom? Back then, it was our dream. This is what we all strive for, though some will need more assistance as they overcome their condition. I was born with congenital deformities of my limbs. This is different from muscular dystrophy, which causes muscle loss. But in the same way, movement and access is always an issue. When I was younger, I would still walk with walking sticks, but I transitioned using a wheelchair later in life as accessibility in Singapore improved. Sometime in the early 90s, I had a trip to Vancouver. It was an overseas conference, and it was amazing that even back then, right, it didn't matter about disability. You know, you could go into the train system, you could go into buildings, and everyone's just moving around, whizzing around on their wheelchairs. It was amazing. And when I was there, I was telling myself, if Vancouver can, why can't we? So when I came back, together with a bunch of us from the Handicaps Welfare Association, right, we got to work and says that, you know, we can't just let someone else tell us we can't. Because we've seen it, I've seen it, I never believe it's possible. But you will be surprised to see that, you know, even though we saw accessibility becoming a reality, right, persons with disabilities not understanding what it could do for us were also fearful of what they didn't understand. But we just kept at it and things eventually improved. We got the code changed in 1995, it became a mandatory requirement, and things started to change. Over time, you saw accessibility happening within buildings. You saw accessible entrances, toilets, car parks. But while architects built them to be accessible, I think people generally didn't understand why toilets were so much larger. Why was it that car parks were so much wider? And it tended to lead to abuse as well. When we asked the cleaners to say, I want you to open the toilets, it was actually used as storeroom or even their rest area. But that was back then, you know, when people didn't understand. I think what really mattered at that point in time for us was to teach people the hows and whys. Why was it larger? Why did it have to be bigger? We even put people into wheelchairs, like architects, for example, for them to understand that putting a ramp doesn't solve a problem, because if the ramp is too steep, we also can't push it up. But it had to be gentle and usable by everybody. We went on to work with LTA on making public transport accessible, from the MRT stations to buses. It took years. But today, every single public bus in Singapore is wheelchair accessible. And it's no short of a miracle to say that, you know, we've come a long way. And I think this distance has to do with The authorities, together with non-profit organizations, social service agencies, architects, developers, all coming together to want to make that change and make that difference happen. We want to see Singapore become a more accessible place to live in. There's always more to do, and I think there's always things that we can do to improve accessibility, and that includes play. And it's not you play on your own, I play on my own. We have to play together. So your parks and my playgrounds and your playgrounds should be the same playground. And persons with disabilities and children of all ages should learn to play together. I dream of a Singapore where everyone, regardless of ability, can not only work, but more importantly, be able to play. Whether it's skiing, camping, or going to the parks, and not just watch others have fun, but to experience it for ourselves. Even ferries, can we make these accessible too? Because we too want to island hop, just like everyone else. It may sound far-fetched, but accessible buses were far-fetched before it happened. Sometimes people are surprised when they see me out on my own and ask, who's going to help you? Is it so hard to believe that persons with disabilities can work and be independent? I tell people with disabilities, live your dream and don't let your disability define how you live your life. Live beyond your limitations. I never wanted to be called an inspiration. I just want to be able to live my life. We're not there yet, but we're moving forward. I believe that with empathy and greater awareness, we can build a country that includes everyone, not just in words, but more importantly, in action. Because in the end, it's not about disability, it's about possibilities.